So seeing as it's miserable outside and I don't have any weddings for, well, until next week anyway, I thought what I'd do is actually have a bit of a breakdown of one of my videos and maybe a couple others if this video does alright and you actually want to see some more. The first video is from Fran and Sam. This was shot over the northeast. The church was absolutely stunning and the venue was just absolutely breathtaking. So basically, let's get straight into it. Let me show you my thoughts as we're kind of going through. So I will be stopping this video.
As I stand here today, I'm literally bursting with pride. You are, you were, you still are a much-loved child. I cried the first night I saw you when you were 1 hour old. I cried again today with emotion when I saw you in your wedding dress. And I'm desperately trying not to cry now. There's a bit of a dust storm outside. You look gorgeous, and this is by far the happiest day of my life.
So first thing I want to do is have a hook, an intro that has a little bit of an impact and almost sets up the rest of the film. This speech by Fran's dad was just beautiful. It was very, very nice. It was very heartwarming and it almost set the tone for the rest of the film. It wasn't in your face, it wasn't overly dramatic, it was just very, very nice. It was just very simple and quite elegant. So all these shots are still part of the intro. They still try to show exactly what you're going to get from all the film, which I quite like to do. And of course the title scene. A little bit of ambient sound. This first shot, even though it's obviously not shot on the same day, this was a pre-shoot. I quite like intertwining a couple of different stories, different narratives in the film. It just keeps things a little bit more interesting, and all we did for this, we went to Talking Town. We discussed the wedding obviously beforehand and went for a little bit of a walk. If you can see the clever editing in here, and then using the trees to obviously cut back to a different shot. I quite like that. So now we're on to the prep stage. Well, prep and world building basically. So what I'm trying to get here is trying to show her story, obviously her prep, his prep, even though we didn't get a lot of it. That's why we've got kind of close-up shots like this. And then the story of the pre-shoot as well. Basically getting all of them together. Just having different things and different vibes. So these shots here of her up in the card from Sam, technically they're not great. The lighting is awful. The room itself we used was tiny. It had a lot of kind of tungsten overhead lamps. The window light was tiny. We didn't have hardly any at all. I could have brought lights in and things like that, but for me the most important part of this is the moment itself. Even though the shot might not be great, the moment is absolutely beautiful, and that is the most important thing I can get in a wedding film.
fancy getting married later.
Oh.
To be my bride and for one final time with Francesca Nicole Cobb.
It's happening.
Thanks for putting up, that's a horrible thing telling you. Thanks for putting up with me for these 13 years. There's been ups and downs, but I wouldn't have changed a second of it for the world. While today's been a long time coming, there was never... there was never any doubt in my life. No, God.
Big breath.
Just for a little bit of technical information, these were shot on, obviously on the gimbal, on the A74 with a 50mm f1.4 to give it that kind of buttery, quite nice out of focus kind of shots. Again, lighting stuff like this, I quite like to put it into a window, but because there was only a tiny window there just wasn't enough room for myself. And then you've got hair and makeup as well, plus 4 or 5 other bridesmaids.
There's never any doubt in my mind that you would have been, that one day you would be my wife. But even when we're married, you will still always be my gorgeous bloody bastard. I can't wait to see you walk down the aisle, and I can't wait to see what forever will have in store for us. All my love forever, Sam.
Oh.
Sam. You broke me.
And this.
Just a very, very subtle there. I don't know if you heard that bit of them laughing wasn't from there. I've basically done an L cut. So I've used the audio from the last piece to come over to the next scene. It just lets it kind of flow a little bit better through. And then the audio from this comes in.
So the idea was this is his sense.
And then as the stories start to come together, this shot here was set up. We've turned the lights off at the top, put this lamp on in the corner to give a little bit of silhouette on the left hand side. Yeah, but these shots we couldn't have done normally just because there wouldn't have been enough light for the makeup artist.
Photos of people who are
In this shot here, Sam got her this bracelet. It basically had shots of her grandparents in it, who are obviously sadly not with us. But then the next shot is basically a match cut to a similar sort of shot of Sam. Shots like that which come together quite nicely. Again, it makes the film flow a little bit. It's not too jarring when I cut from one to another. Now we're getting to the end of one story, which was the pre-shoot. That's kind of coming to an end. And we're kind of coming to an end of the prep shots now, getting all the details in, all the little bits. For those shots, I like to do a little bit subtle rotation or subtle movement. And then for those kind of detail shots, and then going back to almost like a still shot with this, again, it just cuts it up a little bit. Again, you can kind of see how big the window was for the actual room there. And then cutting the shots of Sam at the church with the cars coming in almost makes him feel like he's waiting at this point when we're doing this. But obviously we're not, because I'm not in two places at once, but it feels like that because of the editing. Anytime I do these reaction kind of shots, I don't like any slow-mo, I don't set them up. Again, it goes back to having that moment more than a beautiful shot. The moment itself is much more important than the film, as it were, even though it goes into the film. So I literally just let the camera run. If I misfocus, I misfocus. If sound isn't great, you'll actually hear myself and the photographer talk as well. It just gives it a little bit more natural feeling.
Yeah. Are you ready, pal?
I'm ready.
Okay, Dad, when you're ready.
Now, you can't plan that moment. It's just beautiful.
Hug each other.
Well, a very warm welcome to all of you to St. Lawrence's Church. However far you've travelled, and I guess you have travelled some internationally from America and from Dubai.
See, all the shots of the interior of the church were shot well before all of this. Cutting them together again, it just makes it flow a little bit better. It makes it basically, it almost builds up the anticipation a little bit more. And there'll be shots of Sam in a second, which was shot well before Fran actually got to the venue.
And even from Birmingham and Carlisle and Newcastle and London.
And there's
Well,
me.
it's a great gathering we are, and it's wonderful that you're all here to support Samuel.
So that shot, that previous shot, let me just go back ever so slightly. That's shot on a tripod, of course. That's with the FX3 and the Ninja, obviously just recording. Normally I'd quite like one facing the couple, and then I'd have one from the back, which you'll see in a second. But because this pillar was here, myself and the photographer couldn't get anywhere close. So most of the shots are actually from the back, which is, it's kind of annoying, but that's what it is. With church ceremonies, sometimes you do have to kind of think on your feet a little bit. So this is one of the shots I've got. It's not great, and where they're actually stood, you can't actually see them, so how they used it at all.
To support Samuel and Francesca on this their special day.
The kid was
This
cute.
church dates back over 1,000 years, and throughout that.
And this shot here was shot when the bridesmaids were just coming in. I put it after the bridesmaids because then it makes you feel like he's just about to see Fran coming down. Again, adds that little bit more extra emotion.
At that time, people have come here to be
Especially
in God's
that
presence
small
at
little
significant
smirk he
moments
gives.
in their lives.
And going back to Sam.
Celebrate new life in baptism, to bless love in marriage.
And then that's the shot I had obviously ended up with. I can see part of Fran and I can't see Sam at all, which is, it's just one of those things.
To find comfort
And that's the
in
actually
times
shot
of loss.
I had. So I'm shot there, sat at the very, very back on a monopod. That's with 135mm, so you can kind of see how big the church actually was.
Today, we are here with Samuel and Francesca, and that's what's special about St. Lawrence's on this day.
I, Samuel, take you, Francesca,
I, Francesca, take you, Samuel,
to be my wife,
be my husband.
to have and to hold.
So cutting vows up like this, I almost like it feels like it's like a conversation. But if I was in the same place and didn't move the camera at all, it feels very jarring because it literally just jump, and it jumps a bit weird. Having a slightly different angle makes it feel a little bit more natural. It's still not great, to be honest, because I'd probably want to a bit more angle, but from where I was, I couldn't do much about it.
From this day forward,
For better, for worse,
the richer for poorer,
in sickness and in health,
to love and to cherish.
till
That shot there was on a Osmo Pocket. I literally just kind of put that at the end, just to try and hide it into to kind of get some shots of them.
death us do part.
Till death us do part.
According to God's holy law,
According to God's holy law,
in the presence of God, I make this vow.
in the presence of God, I make this vow.
Therefore proclaim that they are husband and wife.
See Sam actually pull away here. Kind of going for a kiss, it's kind of really awkward, it's quite funny. Because it was a long church, and also the confetti line were ridiculously long, I've cut them both together. Not only does that kind of cut it down a little bit to like the best bits of it, it also lets it transition into the next stage of the video. Again, it's another match cut between the two kissing outside and two kissing at the end of confetti line. And we go back, a little bit of world building, a little bit of B-roll showing the venue, which was amazing. And of course their entrance. The speeches.
And finally, the star of the show.
And then going from shots of the speeches to obviously Sam talking about Fran, then instantly going into the couple session, which there was actually very little of it, to be honest. But again, it's all just trying to make it work as a whole video rather than speeches bit, couple session, group session. The way I do it and kind of cut across and use audio from different parts, it just makes it flow better.
My wife. Some people
Again, shot on a 50mm f1.4.
But when I met Francesca at university,
This was shot on a 135mm.
Who the hell is this scarf-wearing borrower from the north who has his feet on my new table? It was 13 years ago this week, round here, that I first plucked up the courage to ask Fran out with me. Now I know a lot of people think that we rushed into this marriage. And while it may have taken 13 years, throughout that time...
For the speeches themselves, I have one camera on the monopod, and then I actually have a safety, which is on a tripod at the back. Because obviously I give the couple this, I also give the couples a full version of the ceremony, full version of speeches. So the speeches will be cut between this camera and also the tripod camera as well.
There's never been any doubt in my mind that this day would come.
I don't know if you can see there as well, just on his lapel here, there's a Sony TX660. That's where the thing is coming from. Oh, sorry, the Sony is on the microphone itself, and he has a DJI mic just on here.
Seeing you walk down the aisle today, genuinely, I don't know how any man can be so lucky. You mean everything. If these 13 years are just the beginning, I can't wait to see what the rest of our journey holds together. I love you. So for this, I'm going to ask you all to stand for one final time and raise a glass to my wife and my bride, Francesca.
And then still using the audio from that speech, going into the group shots.
To Francesca.
I don't really like group shots because you don't really have that much dynamic kind of movement to it. These kind of shots are really nice where they're kind of walking towards camera, but actual group shots I tend not to use that much. And that previous shot there was actually them cutting a cake. Again, I don't use much of a cut of a cake because it's not particularly interesting for a video's point of view. But what is interesting is that it's generally the crowd, the crowd's reaction and things like that. And then from that, obviously from the cake cutting, which is part of the almost like a couple shot, it goes into the partying. So again, using that transition going into the next part of the video. And there we go. So that's the first video. If there is anything else you wanted to know, please ask me in the comments. And please put a time code on it as well so I know exactly which bit you're talking about. That's just a very quick breakdown of their video. I will kind of go through more as well and hopefully kind of get a little bit more behind the scenes as I'm shooting a wedding video as well. Technically, I didn't really go into much. But again, if you do want to know, feel free to comment or even message me. I do try to answer as many questions as possible, ones that I know, of course. But until next time, thank you very much.